Hello, everyone, and welcome to the tavern. Is all the enthusiasm I can get this week. Rest this is gonna be monotone voice, I promise. We are back with another review of G-Quuuuuuuux. Coolsies. The one thing I have noticed is that G-Quuuuuuuux is starting to get into the apathy stage. There's a lot of people who just don't really care. You don't see it trending, you see the conversations about the series declining. It's fewer and fewer people really care about the show. In fact, when we look for the title card images, with the first few episodes, we were flush with them. We get to about episode 4 or 5, less. Now we're at episode 8, it's near non-existent. And it's a sign of the fact that no one really cares. There's too few people to sit there and go, ooh, I want to screen cap this and discuss it. Or let's screen cap this and make a meme. No one cares. It's apathy stage. Like I said in the last review, when you put out that Zeta Gundam music, it just makes me realize I would much rather be watching Zeta Gundam. And this week we get a bit of a flashback, so it makes me realize I'd much rather watch Classic. But this is a longer episode than normal, so maybe they put stuff in here that'll actually be enjoyable. Let's find out when we break it down. The next time told us that there'd be a flashback in this episode, and there is. We begin in December 0079. However, the war is going very differently. First, we cut to M'Quve and a victory over the Federation, where they actually used the mass production type Big Zam. We even see it do that thing where it does the laser shots out of all directions. While it was kind of cool in the original anime because Dozel was surrounded by enemies, so it just blew a bunch of them away, realistically in battle, you're more likely to hit your own allies or hit nothing at all when you have something that just does spray everywhere attack. We then cut to Granada, which is about to get hit with Solomon because the Federation captured Solomon and they're going to use it as an attack to destroy Granada. It shows Cecilia and she's told, we better evacuate. And she's like, no, it will destroy morale if I leave. So we are staying here until it's absolutely necessary. And sends off Char to handle this. And she lets it drop that she knows he's Casval, as she did in the original series. We cut to Char planning the actual strategy for the battle, which is really cool seeing him actually doing commander stuff. We don't really get to see him do that a lot in the original series, and it's nice to show that yes, he's not just a good mobile suit pilot, he's actually a skilled tactician. We then go to the battle where it's just laser disco, but for the sake of what the battle is, they are trying to charge through enemy lines, so shots being shot everywhere as they go through and try to blow away everyone who's getting in the way is fine for this episode. To ensure that their lander ship can actually land in Solomon in order to place Zaku's that will self-destruct, blowing up the reactors and destroying a chunk of Solomon that will cause it to miss Granada. Char himself enters Solomon and sets up his bomb, except for it's a dud, because he does want Solomon to hit Granada to kill Cecilia Zabi to weaken the Zabi hold on the Principality of Zeon. He is confronted by a white light gun cannon, and in this very brief fight, he realizes that it's Artesia, and then the ceiling is shot, rocks fall on top of the Gundam, and she leaves. Sayla does not even get a line in this sequence. This is literally done to sell you a toy. Because, of course, there's a toy of this, and of course we need to sell it to you, but God forbid we use this as an opportunity to have both siblings talk. To have one of those duels that's not just a duel of the robots, but a duel of personal points of view. This could have been a great opportunity for that, but nope. Rocks fall, Char almost dies. Then his system starts acting up, and he's like, wait, what's going on? Saikamu's system is reacting to someone else. And we get our Zek Nova sequence. In the process, Cassilia's team references the Rose of Charon, and how the Rose of Charon obviously is a person who disappeared. And now this is happening, and they believe it's connected to that. Char has a freak out and says, I can see time! And then, there's like Nova explosion. It stops Solomon from falling. Then we cut to the present. Yay, the present. In the present, we are primarily following Nyan. She is with Cecilia. They are eating food. Cecilia basically says, hey, I can get you a scholarship to Azeon University, and you can establish a proper life and be more comfortable than you've ever been before. And Nyan's like, sure, I'm an edgelord, I'll do whatever. And the price for this, of course, is to create another Zek Nova. Whether this is to study it, or she's going to use it as an attack against somebody, we'll find out. After that little scene, we get a little bit of backstory exposition with Xavier and Nyan. where we learn a few minor things. Neon escaped Side 2 in a mobile suit at some point, and that Xavier has had multiple friends at the New Type Institute that have died trying to pilot these various suits. Then they run into Miguel, who is one of the other students that Xavier knows, and they talk about the deaths of their friends, how he baked a cake for them because he was so excited about his friend being able to graduate to the next stage and being a new type soldier. Then Miguel and Xavier kind of start talking to each other a little bit about how they're worried that maybe someone murdered their friends. 2 deaths in the cockpit is not uncommon. 2 deaths in the cockpit caused by heart attacks. That seems a bit fishy. And this is used for comedy as Neon can hear them because they're like a foot away from her. It's not funny. It just screws up the tone they were creating. Anyhow, we cut to Xavier taking Neon to her home, and in the process, he discusses how there are worries because Giran is apparently building an army of clone cyber new types. So the Puru series exists in this timeline. I doubt we'll ever see them, but I do appreciate the fact that there's a brief reference to the Puru series. I hope Glemmy shows up. Just slightly younger Glemmy. That'd be great. Well, after they're done talking, Neon is given a phone call by Miguel. She goes and meets up with him, and he's like, hey, you know what? As it's tradition, here's your cake. And Neon is like, so it's poison, right? And he's like, huh? How'd you know? Pulls a gun on her, and it's just like, dude, you were unnecessarily nice. And in Gundam, it means either A, you're a character who's been introduced just for them to kill off, or B, you're evil. And since we've already had a character who was very nice, who got killed off immediately, you're evil. And so he pulls the gun on her, and then Xavier's there. You get a nice little standoff that turns into a fight. And in the process, Neon runs towards the mobile suit, because they're eating the cake near the mobile suit for some reason. I think this would be easier to do in her apartment, or your apartment. Some place where she couldn't easily get to a weapon. Anyhow, she climbs up, and Miguel starts yelling, no, I need to save you from yourself. If you get too close to the suit, you'll become a Diablo. And then her eyes glow, the machine glows. He's like, oh, it's already too late. You're already a Diablo. And then he is, of course, killed. Some damage is caused to the city. We cut to Neon, just in her apartment with Xavier, talking about how big her apartment is and how clearly Cassilia has taken a liking to her. We then cut back to Cassilia, who's talking to one of her assistants, and essentially is like, yeah, I know you're the spy, and just blows him away. It's a nice little moment. We then cut to some scientists at an airport talking about the new project and how it's moving forward. And then we get back to Neon's apartment, where Xavier learns that the G-Quuuuuuuux has escaped. Oh no, how could that have ever happened? And then we end the episode of Neon looking out the window and asking if you can see Earth from here. And Xavier tells her, no, we're on the other side of the moon. And you see Solomon floating with the big hole in it, because metaphor. Overall, the story's kind of mixed this time around. On the one hand, there are some really good moments, and we get character work for the first time in the series. But on the other hand, you have the key jangling of Sayla just showing up to sell a toy, and little references like the clone cyber new types, stuff like that. And again, this would have been a much more impactful episode if it had happened 3 or 4 episodes ago. This would have been a strong episode 5, because it gets us really excited about what's going to happen next, what kind of cool things are we going to see, and instead, it's late in the series. This episode was able to focus more on the character interactions, since the action part was not a huge focus. But the flaws of the show are still there, and when you get an episode like this that does story better, you start to notice how bad the story was in the previous episodes. But just because the story is a little bit better, doesn't mean the characters will be. Or will they? Alright, so we have a couple of characters we should talk about this time around. First is Char Aznable. Char shows that he is a good thinker, that he is a planner, that he's actually a military man, and under all that, he's still planning to take out the zombies. We don't learn anything really new about his character, but it's nice to confirm these little aspects of his personality. In fact, in this timeline, it seems like he's considering just taking the throne of the Principality of Zeon, and I don't really recall Char prior to that caring about being a ruler, though it has happened on occasion. They didn't try to character assassinate Char, and I do appreciate that. Then we have Neon. We get a little bit of taste of her backstory, that she's a runaway from Side 2, that she's had a little bit of mobile suit experience, and that she basically feels like she never had any real friends or anything along those lines. Which would be fine if we didn't have the previous couple episodes where she is spending all her time with Machu and Shuji. If she didn't spend time with them, then this would work being, yeah, she has difficulty connecting with people. You could do something with that. Or if she did spend time with them, you have to establish something where this was her faking being social. Like, she actually didn't like these people, but they wanted to spend time around her, so she tolerated it. You could make either of those work, but to have her be like, these are my friends, and I'm in love with Shuji, and then be like, I have no one in my life. I'm an empty soul. So angsty. So edgelord. It just doesn't work. Then we have Xavier. We get to learn about how he was a student, how that's kind of affected him, the losses of his friends, the shock at seeing Miguel betray him, and being a little too okay with things after the death of Miguel. I don't know. It's nice for him to get character moments and to get a little bit more of his backstory and to kind of get his personality down, where he just really wants to do his best for his dead friends, and he genuinely seems to be concerned about Neon, which is nice. When it comes to our minor characters, they come off pretty good. First, we have Miguel, which I kind of wonder if that's a reference to Gundam Seed. Probably not. But he comes off initially as the super nice guy, which again in Gundam is a massive red flag. And then we find out that he is actually working with Gihren. But his reasoning is he is afraid of new types losing control and becoming Diablos. So it is kind of cool seeing that kind of point of view where from his perspective, he's doing the right thing. I'm killing you before you become a danger to yourself. And worse yet, a danger to others. And for him to get killed by Neon, who can control the suit without even being in it, is a fitting death for the character. And the way that Neon glows and the suit glows, you definitely have this Diablo energy, which I think works really well. It allows us to see what he was afraid of and know that this will have consequences. Finally, we have Lady Cassilia. Yay, I get to talk about her again. We get to see a lot more of her personality in this episode. We see the fact that she doesn't want to retreat or escape off Granada during the attack, very similar to how she had that attitude at Bawaku, until she was finally convinced, we're all going to die if we stay here, we got to get out of here for the sake of Zeon's survival. Having that same kind of attitude is really nice. We also get to see her do something cool where she does the kind of the speech and then pulls out the gun and blows away the spy. Gotta love that kind of stuff. We see her manipulative side as well, while she's trying to find what she can give to Neon to get Neon to fulfill what she needs her to fulfill. She clearly has plans to deal with her brother and to bring forth advancements in new type technology. So I do appreciate that. I think that's a lot for her character, and I'm kind of surprised they chose to give her this much focus. Overall, the characters aren't too bad. What really helps is that there's very few characters in this episode. You get a few members of Char's team in the flashback, including Chalia Bull, who's exactly the same. But for the most part, you're focusing on Neon, Miguel, Xavier, and Cassilia. And I think that works for the show. Gundam at its heart is a character-driven show, and if you have characters that you like, that you attach to, or at least you understand on some level, it makes the show so much more compelling. And this time around, we actually got that. We got to see what happens when you focus a little bit more on character and allow them to express themselves, allow them to kind of show their inner turmoil stuff or their ambitions or what have you. The improvements in the story are great, but do the aesthetics hold up? Let's find out. When it comes to the aesthetics, the show already has set a fairly high standard, but there are a few things I would like to talk about this week. First off, we do get the classic Gundam music again. I do appreciate that. It's kind of nice having those tunes, but the thing that kind of upset me this episode was in the end parts where we're getting some of the scheming talk and more of Neon having some issues and things like that, the end theme kicks in. And the problem is the end theme is relatively upbeat, and it, again, clashes with what we're seeing. Now, other Gundam series have done this, where the end theme is playing while events are occurring in the story, but usually that end theme is more tonally based for the series. For example, they did that quite often with Iron-Blooded Orphans, but that song is fairly downbeat, and it works with the downbeat feeling of that show. Here, we have the problem of an upbeat song, but a downbeat scene. And the thing is, they don't show any of the animation from the normal closing sequence, which means you didn't have to use that song. You could have used a different song there that more fit the tone of what's going on. And again, The staff doesn't get it. Tone in the music must go along with the tone of the visual, with very, very few exceptions. In this series, the creative staff is not good enough to do one of those exceptions. Seeing them just do that again, 2 episodes in a row, is getting a little much. Guys, stop it. When it comes to the visuals, we've got a few different things here that I think stood out, and not always for the best. First off, we have the laser disco again. Now, it does work in this sequence, as I said in the story part, but it still annoys me. I'm more forgiving of it here than I was in the last episode, so that's fine, but it's not a particularly exciting action sequence to watch. We then have the fight with Sayla, which, again, Sayla has like no lines of dialogue. The fight lasts 10 seconds, maybe, and is massively anticlimactic with Rock's fall, Char loses. The worst part is this has that strong member berry energy and that strong we're trying to sell you a toy energy, and it definitely takes away from the show, especially when you realize from a writing perspective there's a lot of stuff you could do right here, and they do none of it. We then have the new G-Quuuuuuuux type, and it's lighting up with the way the eyes glow and the energy going around it. Looks like it has some actual funnels instead of bits, and also seeing how Neon's body is reacting makes for a cool visual right there, and shows that her kind of madness she went into when she used the G-Quuuuuuuux is part of just who she is and how she experiences being a new type. On the note of Neon, you also have that end sequence where she's looking out into space and you see Solomon with the big hole. It's like, oh, see, big hole, and she's feeling empty inside. Cute. I'll say this, at least in terms of the leitmotif stuff they were doing, this one works a little bit better. But it still causes problems with the fact that she has not shown this kind of behavior or personality, like up until this point in the story. They just decided, oh no, now she's like emo and edgelordy and has a hole in her heart, versus before where she kind of didn't. She was just kind of bland in there. So even though the metaphor works, it fails on the point that I know what her character was like in the previous episodes, and this doesn't inform me on the character so much as it's like, hey, this is her personality now, deal with it. Because bad writing. Finally, a nice little visual thing. You see the sign at the airport showing off the different cities, many of which are Gundam references, which I do appreciate those being there. It's a fun little like, see, you know those locations. You know Shangri-La and Londinium and New Hong Kong. And I'm like, yes, I do know those locations. Thank you for that nice little visual thing. When they do the member berry stuff like that, I don't mind it so much. It's just a nice little like, hey, locations you recognize the names of, versus the Sayla thing. Overall, the aesthetics are still pretty good, but a lot of the tricks they've been using to kind of make me go, ooh, I really like that, are very much losing their steam. You add in like some bad music choices and some member berries in order to sell toys, and it embitters me quite a bit towards the aesthetics, which is rather unfortunate because it is still a well-drawn series, and for the most part, the music is pretty good. I think it's time for our final verdict. This episode was an odd one. The first half is primarily an action sequence, a little bit of talking at the beginning and a little bit of talking at the end, but for the most part you're just seeing Mobile Suit's battle in the last days of the One-Year War. The second half is significantly more dialogue heavy. We're actually getting to know our characters a little bit better, we're being told about little things we should know for this big finale that's maybe coming up, hopefully, probably, and you get the Miguel fight, which is kind of nice. The one thing this episode really re-emphasized for me is a line I said quite some time ago. This show is the best when we're focusing on the Zeon characters, and this episode proves that. I am significantly more interested in what's going on with Cecilia and Girin. I am more interested in Xavier and his backstory. I am more interested in what's going to happen with these advanced new type mobile suits. That stuff to me is far more interesting than Machu wants to go swimming, or Shuji says random stuff while staring at a wall. I don't know why they decided to make our 3 leads so terrible, when everything else seems quite interesting. And frankly, I would prefer a show about everything else. These other characters are just getting in the way of what could have been a really good Gundam series. That's why my final verdict for episode 8 of G-Quuuuuuuux is 2.5 out of 5. A fairly average episode, but one of the better ones in this series. There's actually some minor story stuff happening here, which is always nice. In fact, I would prefer story in every episode. It'd be really great. The characters are at least fleshed out a little bit, but it feels like we could have done more with that. Our audio has some issues, and our visuals are more or less kind of plain, but every episode can't be a banger in terms of the aesthetics. The bigger thing that's hurting the show is every episode reduces my enjoyment slightly more. And while this one was a bump for me due to the fact that we have story and character stuff, it's not enough for me to go, oh yeah, this was really good. It's enough for me to go, yeah, that wasn't too bad. I kind of enjoyed that. And unfortunately, it is a sign of the weaknesses that we're going to have, because what it feels like is we front-loaded a lot of stuff, we're going to end-load a lot of stuff. That middle part that just kind of sucked hurts the show overall. And the problem is those things stuck with me. The annoyance and the boredom and things like that are sticking with me as a reviewer and as a just fan of Gundam. What we have here is a show that's just kind of dragging until we need to sprint for the end. And that is rather unfortunate because sprinting for the end is not a great way to do a show. It shows a major problem with the writers where they couldn't pace the show properly. And I feel like the issues we're facing right now are just going to be exasperated by the time we get to the end. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you have the chance, let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments. All that being said, please come back next week when I discuss episode 9 of G-Quuuuuuuuux. And until then, I'll see you at the tavern.